Okay, thank you very much, Fern. So yes, as Fern says, I'm Geoff Moss. I'm the Web Development Manager here. In short, that means that I manage the technical development and maintenance side of our websites, as well as providing consultation and technical guidance on projects involving web technology, which the IIIF very much does. Today, I'll be talking about the IIIF, which I believe is a potentially very significant development in the use of web technology in the education and cultural sectors, in particular for people involved with digital art history work. It is going to be quite an introductory level, but as Fern alluded to there, I think people may have a slight knowledge of it, but haven't joined all of the dots together and what that practically means. It's not going to be, because of that, it's not going to be in depth in probably any of the areas, but we'll touch on pretty much all the areas that are of significance, I think. So we'll touch on technical, hopefully not get too deep into that and not too technical. And I'll also start with a bit of a background to why the IIIF is relevant and its importance and how it came about. So yes, the International Image Interoperability. There you go, I failed on the first use of interoperability. International Image Interoperability Framework, or as I didn't first know when I read it, the IIIF is how it's referred to rather than IIIF. If you haven't already heard of it, you might guess from that title that images are very much at the heart of the IIIF. So I'd like to begin with a brief reflection on what an image is. It can be, of course, an endless number of different things. It could be a photo taken moments ago or in the earliest days of photography. It could be perhaps a drawing. It could be a painting, an object, or indeed something within that object, like pages from a book, newspaper, or manuscript. That alone makes it clear just how incredibly important images are for culture, and it's fair to say that images are fundamental carriers for cultural heritage. For centuries, these information carriers have been solely in physical form as an object themselves or a physical reproduction or representation. But we are now living in a new age, the digital age. What does that mean, other than some people using it as an excuse for bad spelling? What do digital images mean for us and our relationship with our cultural heritage? What does it mean for universities, museums, galleries, libraries to be using not just physical but non-physical objects? Well, a key difference is that these digital carriers for cultural heritage have none of the restrictions of physical. They're essentially non-physical. This brings us enormous potential. Firstly, it removes geographic barriers to interacting with images. Would you like to look at an image of a piece of art of a historical interest that's physically on the other side of the world? No problem. The internet has globalized access to digital images. Would you like to perform a side-by-side comparison of an object in a local collection with another physically based, perhaps in New Zealand, or another in Hong Kong and another in Canada? No problem. The digital versions can come to you and you can do just that. Digital images also, of course, provide a plethora of new ways to interact with these cultural assets. So, would you like to take an extreme close-up look at the centre of an 11-metre wide ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead without rolling out the entire map on the floor? No problem, we can do that with digital tools. Would you like to collaborate with a researcher on the other side of the world in doing that, assisted with electronic annotations? That's something else we can do, no problem. How about enabling students to digitally recombine and study fragment leaves from a single dismembered manuscript, which are now physically across the world in several physical locations? No problem. That hopefully gives a taste of the potential we have in digital images, and there'll be much more where that came from. But how effectively has that potential been realised so far? The answer is, frankly, not very. Throughout that last slide, I was saying no problem, no problem, no problem, but in truth, there have been problems. When these enabling technologies first came about, there was a rather chaotic wild, wild west of a situation, with institutions scrambling around to realise that potential with many, many problems and obstacles along the way. Firstly, with those efforts came a wide range of competing technical standards. Okay, it's great that we've got digital images, but if somebody on the other side of the world wants to engage with a few from a million digital images we have, how do we technically enable them to do that? For a while, there was a situation where for every collection of digital images, there was a different technical approach to dealing with them. How they were digitized, how they were stored, how they were then delivered, and how they were then interacted with. So much of the potential we're talking about here is clearly international in that sense. It's about digitally opening up the breadth of human cultural heritage to humankind worldwide. But that can't be effectively achieved without agreed standards. In IT terms, the internet would not exist without standards. How would one machine be able to guarantee it could communicate with another machine on the other side of the world without a standard for that communication? So institutions worldwide were in our Wild Wild West implementing a wide range of different systems for digital images. But more importantly, they were closed and often proprietary systems without adherence to standards that enable them to effectively work together, without the open access and opportunity to improve on them, of course. Not to mention there was a huge amount of wasteful duplication of efforts taking place with people simultaneously across the world attempting to do the same thing in parallel and putting all their efforts and resources towards that. Now, there's nothing wrong with different technologies, of course. It's important to note that I'm not talking about everybody needing to use a single prescribed list of technologies, but a silo system, i.e. a system with significant barriers between those stored images and other systems, is a serious obstacle to our achieving the potential of digital images. To realise that potential, to paraphrase the Pope to Donald Trump, don't build walls, build bridges, and build them everywhere, because these silos have obstructed the potential, not just internationally, but even at the more local level, with institutions themselves often ending up with several different technical approaches and different systems, housing and presenting several different collections of digital images in different and isolated ways. Which brings us on to some of the more practical front-end in IT terms problems, those of inadequate user tools. It's not just about how the images are stored, it's then about how practically they can be engaged with. It's not just that delivering these images to people was being made difficult, slow, and idiosyncratic. It's that they were then received by users in a rather disjointed and ugly way, without effective tools to engage with lots of often huge images, to zoom in extremely close, to rotate them, to compare them with each other, to collect them together in sets, and to make annotations, or to search and analyze. Then we fail to realize that potential that we have with digital images. So what would help to achieve that potential then in the face of these obstacles? What could help us deal with this overly complex, disjointed and expensive situation with images? Well, clearly it needs to be international in nature. A common approach for the greater good is needed in this kind of situation and the problems that we had. And key to that common approach is achieving interoperability, the ability for these many repositories of digital cultural heritage to easily exchange and make use of data. And in terms of organising and planning, that can be best delivered through a framework, both in terms of a community framework, but also a technology framework, so a standard way to operate, bringing parts together to enable operating as an effective system, developing and providing the means and tools for rich digital interaction with our global cultural heritage. Enter stage left, the IIIF. Fortunately, in 2011-12, the likes of Tom Kramer, who's the Chief Technology Strategist for Stanford University, took steps to try to tame that wild, wild west that I alluded to earlier, and work began on establishing the IIIF. The vision was, and remains, to create a global framework by which image-based resources from any participating institution can be delivered in a standard way via any compatible image server for display, manipulation and annotation in any application to any user on the web. So we'll take a look first at the international side of it and how successful it is at this point in time. It is a wholeheartedly international effort which continues to grow around the world. Institutions embracing the IIIF include the national libraries of Denmark, Egypt, Israel, New Zealand, Poland, Serbia, Wales and the British Library here of course, plus a range of universities and other institutions both near and far, from France and Switzerland to Japan and Hong Kong. Actually, I noticed this morning that the Victoria and Albert Museum isn't on this list, and it probably should be, because they're doing a lot with IIIF. Hopefully you can also see on screen that amongst these registered participating institutions, some are emboldened and underlined. These are institutions that are not just participating in the IIIF, but have committed to the IIIF consortium, by which they've committed themselves to long-term investment in the IIIF approach, both in terms of their own activities and also in terms of $10,000 per annum funding to the IIIF cause. At time of writing, that's 48 institutions, including amongst others Harvard, Stanford, Cambridge, the Bodleian Library, mentioned earlier, Smithsonian, the Vatican Library, the US National Gallery, and many of the related projects have also received Andrew W. Mellon Foundation funding, so there is recognition of the value of IIIF from funding sources. With all these committed institutions, of course, come their digital collections, present and future. At time of writing, that's more than 335 million images which are currently available online through IIIF compatibility. So hopefully it's apparent from all these details that IIIF is a sizable and serious community effort to shape the future of the use of digital images. So I've summarised why there's a need for something like the IIIF and where it's being embraced now, but we're a bit short at this point of what. What in technical terms is the IIIF? What does it consist of? As I say, this presentation is intended as introductory, so we won't be looking too deeply into the technicals, but a general overview I think will still be beneficial to people, and as I said earlier, starts to join those dots up for people. So we'll cover that for the next few slides before getting on to a few fun hands-on bits and pieces after that. At the heart of the IIIF are application programming interfaces, or APIs. These are the technical standards that facilitate that effective sharing of content and data between systems and services. So they're very much the key to the framework. And there are two core APIs behind the IIIF. The first is the Image API. This is what is sometimes referred to as the Get Pixels part of the approach, in that it is the standard for image delivery, so for communicating with an image server to get the pixels of an image or from an image, so potentially part of an image. And currently this can cover what region of the image to retrieve, at what size, with what rotation, at what color quality, and in what file format. I say currently because it is an evolving standard, so these things can be enhanced and extended further down the line. The second is the Presentation API. This is intended to then provide just enough metadata to drive a remote viewing experience. What that means practically is that it provides the key richness to enable not just a view of an image, but an experience of an image-based object. So it can provide an order to multiple different views from the same object, the resources needed to display a representation of a view, and the descriptive information needed to allow the user to understand what it is exactly that's being seen in that image. Working with these two core APIs are supplementary APIs, and the two major supplementary APIs at the moment, again these can and will be expanded on, are the Authentication API, which enables restricted access. There's a key use to that, of course. And the Search API, which enables, as the name suggests, search within either the associated metadata or within the images themselves in the case of things like optical character recognition. All IIIF APIs are open standards, meaning that they are publicly available and open to scrutiny and contributions, which All, of course, sits perfectly with principles of open access in the sector. What's more, they're required to be consistent with and use existing open standards where possible and to conform to relevant web architecture standards as defined by the web industry body, the W3C. So overall, it's designed as part of an overall patchwork. It's designed specifically to avoid the major risks of silos and of going up a technological dead end. It's not intending to say this is the be-all and end-all, this is what you do. It's trying to fit in to the wider picture. Okay, so how does this then get used? I'll represent for you here now the software stack, if you will, that would be involved in a use of IIIF from bottom to top. This isn't exhaustive, either in the software available that we'll take a look at or in the use cases for the APIs. It's just meant as a standard typical usage of IIIF. At the base, as you'll see at the bottom there, is an image server that can deliver the images, use the image API, or parts of images by URI. Here is a selection of the most widely recognized image server support, with software supporting it out of the box. Now, there are many other image servers which can be set up to support IIIF. There's many tech hacks that have been developed for people to enable other image servers to do them, but these are those that already have it baked in and you can use it as they are. The images then need to be enriched with presentation API compliant metadata. Again, be that through a server that supports it out of the box or by some customization to implement it. Thanks to IIIF campaigning, many leading content and collection management systems are also starting to roll IIIF support into their offerings, covering both images and metadata, and in some cases viewers in the same offering. So Content DM, for example, one that's listed there, is not simply a server, but it's actually a full digital collections management system. So it enables you to set up your metadata as well as deliver the images from within that. Deploying or integrating an image viewer then enables you to draw from those IIIF compliant image servers. Broadly speaking, these might be put into two categories. Image viewers with IIIF support being the first one. Here, IIIF is more of an enhancement of a more simple single image viewing functionality, though it may perhaps have some features like zoom. Here are a selection of notable viewers of that type. Many of them are JavaScript based, and they might offer some functions that are outside of IIIF, but IIIF then enhances what it is that they do. And then finally, there are IIIF first collection viewers. So these typically have IIIF at their core and might be built specifically and bespoke for IIIF purposes. So they take fuller advantage of IIIF, and particularly the ability to work on collections and in workspaces. The leading ones in that area being Universal Viewer, Mirador, and a few others. IIIF enables those richer collections and workspaces based experience through the APIs being used in combination, and also through the embrace of a shared canvas data model, which we'll take a brief look at next. The shared canvas data model is the way that those Mirador and Universal viewers, those more enhanced viewers, can piece everything together using a canvas here, which is an abstract space. So defined by top left and bottom right corners, corresponding to equivalent corners of a page. And then on that virtual canvas, we can build up a page of one or multiple images, or indeed areas of images, all pulled in from IIIF compliant sources. These can then be placed alongside each other or layered. And the presentation API metadata, including a sequence resource which it has, which enables you to not have standalone objects, but also objects that are interrelated. This then allows the associating of different images, areas, and shared canvas pages in sequences. Use of the open annotation data model is also used, which allows layers of annotations then to exist in that shared canvas space. Okay, so hopefully now you have a reasonable understanding of why there's a need for IIIF, where it's in use, what in technical essence it is, but what about how? How, as a researcher or professional in the area of art history, can you take advantage of the IIIF? The ideal, of course, is to be working with or at an institution that's embracing the IIIF, particularly if they have digital image assets themselves. Although the vast majority of the tools developed are open source. Many of them are primarily geared towards specific project use, though, so they are set up, for example, to focus on a particular digital collection or project. And we'll take a look at some examples from these shortly. Many of the institutions embracing IIIF have already been mentioned, but if you're part of one that hasn't been mentioned as yet, you can of course be part of the solution if you're sold on the concept and the potential role of the IIIF. Spread the word, sing the IIIF's praises, be a flag bearer, and help to persuade your institution of its potential and its significance. Join the vanguard, storming around on horses, trying to tame that wild, wild west that I mentioned earlier. Horses optional. You don't need to be at an institution that's embracing IIIF to begin to take advantage of it, though, because the tools are open and some are available for use with nothing more than a browser required. In fact, most of them are web-based tools. And I expect this type of use to grow in the future, with more and more of the tools focusing on the needs of individual researchers in the sector and not simply being about individual development projects. So let's finally get started then by taking a look at some of the tools. This is when you'll be able to get stuck in with your browser. I will see if I can get Google Slides working with the browser on the big screen as well. It's the first time I've used Google Slides for a presentation, but otherwise have your browser at the ready and get typing in with these links and we'll have a look. I'm going to take a look at a range of different uses of IIIF to hopefully provide a broad overview of what's possible and some of the things that are currently being done with IIIF. We'll pick up on a few of those earlier use cases that I mentioned along the way, look at some of the most widespread tools, and also move on to a few little fun demos at the end to demonstrate some of the more creative potential working with IIIF. Some of these are set up purely as demos. They're not fully functioning versions, whereas others are actually in active use. Some are tied to particular collections, whereas others you could already use for your own purposes online immediately. So we will start with that use case that I made passing mention of earlier on, a piece of art on the other side of the world. So this is the quite basic and simple usage of IIIF. Let's see how Google Slides is going to treat me. Quite well, it seems. Okay, so the link there for you. Bit.ly Princeton-OSD-demo. Now once you're there, if you'd like to click on scroll 1, you will have an image of a piece of art of historical interest that's physically on the other side of the world. This is being delivered to us from Princeton. And yes, as alluded to in another use case, that's an 11-meter wide ancient Egyptian Book of the Dead. So do feel free to have a little play around with it. So this is a good example of one of those particular features that IIIF focuses in on, which is the ability to hyper zoom. As I'm sure you can manage 11 meters of manuscript. Not really as easy to pluck straight into any little fragment of it in seconds. We can go all the way in to anywhere on that. So.
Can you read it to us, Geoff?
Yeah. I'll do a special after class after this presentation is finished where I'll recite the entire scroll.
There'll be more brownies for that.
So that is delivered using one of those image servers that I mentioned earlier on, Loris, which is an open source image server that has IIIF compliance. And then in the browser there, it is making use of OpenSeaDragon, which is one of the IIIF enhanced image viewers I mentioned in the previous one. Got another example here from Princeton, and we're doing quite a lot. Another very, very, very wide scroll. That one, link, sorry, if you wanted to look there as well as Princeton-demo. Just phenomenal level of detail that you can zoom into on this. That's part and parcel of one of the standards of IIIF, the use of tiles, which is very necessary to be able to do hyper zoom rather than actually loading up one huge image instantly. That just wouldn't be fast, it wouldn't be effective. I don't, I'm afraid, no.
I may just think.
I think based on that URL, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it could potentially be 10 million tiles.
I thought you were going to say like 8 or something.
There will be an awful lot of them. I mean, it may be that URL is more based on the scope for how many tiles you could potentially have, but there'll be a lot.
There's a lot.
So yeah, this is an example then of both us viewing something from a IIIF compliant server and viewing it through a IIIF compliant enhanced image viewer. Okay. And the next example here is of a side-by-side comparison. Another little use case that I mentioned earlier on. And I've got 2 example links up for this one. So it's Yale-SAP. This is a search result. Let's see if I can just get it up on screen here to save all the page load times. This is a search result from the Yale Centre for British Art, who are very much embracing the IIIF. It's a search result for Somerset House. Now, if you scroll down to the 3rd row, we are having some load issues here. I'll perhaps just try and demonstrate it on here. So clicking through, having used the Yale Centre for British Art search there, it brings us to a view of Somerset House here. Engraving, I believe, if I recall correctly, yeah, by Thomas Bowles. And you will see over here underneath those details a IIIF logo. If we click on the IIIF logo, it opens that up within Mirador viewer, which is one of those, if you recall, one of the major IIIF focused viewers. So first we'll take a brief look here to see it features the same kind of details such as zoom that the other had. But as alluded to, one of the major benefits of things like Mirador is that you can do much cleverer things, such as a side-by-side comparison. So here I'm going to go up to the top right when we have change layout within Mirador and change it to a 1x2 layout. I'll now go back to our search results. Here we have the Thames and Waterloo Bridge from Somerset House. Now, it's not supported by all collections that are making use of IIIF. However, it is on this one the ability to take that IIIF icon and drag drop it, which I'm going to have to do twice there because it's not working. Okay, so using something like that Yale search there, we can just pluck out particular items that they have in their collection. We can drop them into Mirador, and we can layer them all out into a collection of things. Might be different versions of the same thing. They could be lots of different Dutch masterpieces. They could be a variety of different things, obviously, whatever it is that you happen to be wanting to look at. And you can then make use of those in parallel. You can do a side-by-side comparison. The item I was going to be doing side-by-side comparison with was an alternative version of this same shot, which was exactly the same except very slightly different. And with the ability of zoom, you can then easily compare that.
You said this uses Mirador,
Mm-hmm.
which is different. So you could not drag the Princeton image into this comparison.
The Princeton IIIF exists on different layers and is output in different ways. Mirador supports that ability.
Yeah.
Ultimately, any image that is being delivered to the IIIF standards, you can simply take that URL and set it up somewhere. But the viewer has to be enabled for you to just drag drop it in there, or use a URL instead of a drag drop. At the very least, you can use the URL for the manifest, as it's known. But this is where we start to hit the points where some of it is set up for individual projects rather than it being set up as a layer as a standard for use in all circumstances. But I think that's starting to change.
Everything would be set up for open use.
Yeah. It's starting to become more of one single standard approach to how you use it, rather than, as I say, it being quite project and collection specific as it is rather at the moment. So yeah, there is actually the link that I've got there, the Yale-Mirador link there, is Yale's openly usable setup of Mirador. That is something that you can have a carte blanche with, and then if you've got anything that's got a drag droppable, then you can do it in that way, or you can just input the URL as well. So I'll just show you that one there. So mirador.britishart.yale.edu, you just have this open version of Mirador that you can make use of yourself, and you can drop things in. Yeah, this is of course how Yale themselves have decided to set Mirador up for this address. You can theme it and style it in different ways. That's often used at a project level, but this is how they've set it up. So it may be that your needs don't match precisely how mirador.britishart.yale.edu has it set up. I don't off the top of my head know how they've got it set, if they've got every ability set up there. For example, some of those features, the annotation in particular, which we'll take a look at a little bit later, are still very much project by project configured. There's not one single open layer of annotation where you just enable annotations on Mirador and then they're all accessible. It's more that somebody would implement Mirador with their own tech stack with annotations for their purpose, which we'll look at.
Have you ever actually used
as well.
I
I haven't got an example here. It is problematic for some of them. Yeah.
I wonder which URL it is that actually.
You're right. Well, the difficulty is, I think, that it's the manifest that you want to get in there. The manifest being the kind of technical grouping of all of the details. If you have the manifest, it will work, but there are other URLs out there which, if you drop them in there, it's just not going to work. And some of the demos also, the Mirador demos that are up there, are a bit cumbersome. They're only intended for demo purposes and they're not fast enough at actually pulling in the resources, I think. But yep, that is Mirador. And the next one we will take a little look at another use of Mirador. Just as a bit of an example of a use case for having alternative versions of something within Mirador. So here we've got the this is, sorry, let's get back here and click that up. It's Bentley Frankenstein -IIIF. and this is from the Bodleian's extensive collection of Mary Shelley's manuscripts for Frankenstein. So you can see here it's an example of being able to have a very close-up comparison of a number of different versions or varying versions at the same time, and it also demonstrates the ability to flick between sequenced pages within a digitized object rather than it being just about a single individual image that's being delivered. Okay, and one more Mirador one here. It's an example of what I was talking about there in terms of how Mirador is actually implemented and set up. In the top left of these windows, you'll see that there's just one icon for toggle image manipulation. However, on the next one, which is Mirador-annotate, oh, there we go, it's worked okay this time. So yeah, an example of pulling from two completely different sources for the same kind of things, located physically in different places. And on that previous screen, you had just the one option for toggle image manipulation. Here we also have one for toggle annotations, because in this demo they have annotations all set up and configured to go for the demo. Toggle image manipulation gives you an idea of what you can do using IIIF to scrutinize those images in a slightly different way. IIIF isn't intended as an image manipulation tool, so it's not there in of itself to allow you to process those. However, it does have some simple basic aspects which it can do. So rotating, for example, adjusting the brightness, adjusting the contrast, saturation, grayscale, colours mirroring the image, etc. Just the kind of simple basic tools that are of use to people that are actually closely scrutinising those images. Academic purposes kind of tools. And then annotations, which I'll do a very quick demo of here. Do feel free to mess around with it on yours as well. Typed in, and then there's your annotation. This is, as I say, a demo, so that annotation is not going to do anything for anybody. It's not like it's therefore now saved in the cloud and somebody else is going to be able to work with it as well. But that's when it comes to particular projects taking advantage of annotation, or hopefully in the future a more open sector-wide layered approach. The best examples of movements in that sector, I think, are probably the Hypothesis project. I'm not sure if anyone's come across it. Hypothesis.is and the Annotating All Knowledge Coalition as well. They're both focusing on interoperability and use of the Open Annotations standard. So there is a united interoperable approach and standard to open annotations emerging currently, and with IIIF supporting open annotations, it is part and parcel of that process. Okay, so there's a fair few examples from Mirador. For the next one, we'll take a look at the Universal Viewer as being used by the Wellcome Library. So a slightly different look to it, the Universal Viewer, but it's all built on the same kind of architecture, the same APIs. The images being delivered in the same way as they were for Mirador from the image API, and the metadata coming in the same way as well from the presentation API. But this setup here with the Universal Viewer has some of the search functionality. The search API also in place here. So, as a simple example, you can just input something there, and then it enables you to jump through to the instances of that. This obviously ties in as well with optical character recognition and annotations for manual recognition of words and what have you. So it's very much an example of how it's a layering of different technologies together to provide as useful an end product as possible. You can see here, if I click on the More Information tab on the side, an example of all that key metadata, including licensing, for example, that comes along with this image as delivered through IIIF. And another example of IIIF sequencing being used there to piece together individual images into a unified object. With a handy index as well. Okay, next a project by the National Library of Wales, who are doing a lot of great things with IIIF, particularly involving annotations, optical character recognition, and crowdsourcing. In particular, I do recommend visiting their site if you want to find out a bit more about what they're doing exactly. Newspapers.library.wales for this particular one. But yes, I made mention of annotations and how it's very often on a project basis. A lot of the projects they've been involved in have been all about annotations and the potential there for crowdsourcing those annotations. So using that tool they provide there, you can embrace the search technology to go through an enormous resource of digitised newspapers that the National Library of Wales have in place. And as I've done the example here, perhaps pluck out every use of the word train. Now obviously this is quite a text-based usage. It is for most use in this way for books or manuscripts or that kind of thing, but the same applies to annotations that are associated with certain areas of images, of paintings or any other kind of cultural output in image form. You can have it in a way that you can search through. So this is an example of how the tools are most often embraced currently for specific projects and collections. And some of these are on a meta level, so they're drawing on an expanding number of different digitised collections in particular fields. I'll just mention three, and you'll see them listed up here, three leading ones. Although there are several springing up at the moment. The first listed there is BibliaSumo. BibliaSumo would term itself a virtual library of libraries, covering the history of ancient collections of manuscripts and prints. It already includes major European collections and it continues to expand as it's still in development, hence the beta URL there. So if you visit that area there, you'll not find that many images that are actually directly at this point being delivered by IIIF, though IIIF is now a core part of the BibliaSumo project. But you'll get an idea, hopefully, of the way that IIIF is part of some large digital cultural history projects and initiatives that are pushing the borders on what we can do with digital cultural history online. So BibliaSumo, a very interesting way of tracking the life of books across geographical spaces. You also have there Pharos, the Pharos Art Research Project, which is an international photo archives. Photos from the Courtauld's own Wit Library collection will appear here in the future as part of our own digitisation efforts. So it's the start of what will hopefully be a very long journey into the future for the Courtauld. So Europeana has now over 50 million digitised items from dozens of European collections. They've only relatively recently made IIIF, I think it was about a year ago, a core part of the project, but now it is there. these items can all be expected to gradually become IIIF based, so that is likely going to result in 50 million more images that support IIIF. But that is a process, because it has been often about individual institutions and whether they embrace IIIF. Anybody that's buying into Europeana and working with them, and as part of that will now have Europeana heavily recommending that in what they do, they make it IIIF compliant. So it's part of the gathering momentum that IIIF has. Now on to some more fun and creative demos. These are intended to demonstrate some further creative uses and, dare I say, fun uses that the IIIF enables through its technology. The first is georeferencing. So if you'd like to use that link, BL-georeference. So, BL standing there for British Library, very much embracing IIIF. And you'll see here this very simple little example that I threw in place here of Somerset House, and a historical map image of Somerset House overlaid onto a Google Maps image of Somerset House. You can manipulate and layer these IIIF delivered images in all manner of ways. One of those is mapping. Now this is from georeferencer.com, which is essentially a commercial service built on the back of some IIIF standards. Having said that, it's up to $25 a month for up to 50 maps for anybody that's using it for their own research purposes. It's just about accessible. Otherwise, they are working with institutions in partnership for projects that would particularly benefit from a georeferencing use of IIIF. Next, we have a fun example of automated image analysis using IIIF. So it's bit.ly/cogapp-ml for machine learning. So again, as it's an API, it can work with other systems. You can integrate it with other approaches. And here, what CogApp did, they asked some people that are heavily involved in developing IIIF solutions. What they've done here is they have plugged a bunch of IIIF delivered images through Google, Microsoft, and Clarify machine learning systems, and therefore generated some machine-generated labels for the images. So we can just, for example, on the left, click woman, and it filters to what those machines believe are women. I flicked through and it's not 100% accurate. So yeah, cutting edge, not quite there in terms of accuracy, but a useful demonstration, hopefully, of the way that IIIF can work with other emerging technologies.
This one's the most fun.
Okay. Penultimate little fun and creative. Sign above a door.
No person.
Penultimate little fun and creative one is the IIIF tile puzzles. So bit.ly/IIIF-tiles. Which is a good representation, I think, of a few things regarding IIIF. One is the fact that it is not just about images as a whole, it's about regions of those images. You can reference particular subsections of an image, you can pluck out those subsections of an image, and you can then put those bits of image together and do what you want with them. In this case, you just click on any one of these, and you've got yourself a nice little sliding tile puzzle See if you can reconstruct, etc., etc. Well, you touch on a reason that this is quite a good example, I think, is that it's enabling ways to engage different generations in digital art history and new creative, playful toys. Okay, and one final little fun and creative demo. I think it's fun anyway, and it's meant to segue onto the future for the future directions for IIIF. So that's bit.ly/uv-3d-demo. That's the link again if anyone missed it. That's what we have for demo. And this is delivered by a Universal Viewer, but this isn't an image, this is actually a 3D object. Because the IIIF API are evolving and developing, as I say, that's the nature of them. They're open and they're not just static, they are part of a community framework that's developing and evolving them. And one of the key directions for potential use of IIIF in the future is not just static images, but providing for the needs of time-based objects like video and audio, plus also 3D objects in the future. So there is already a level of ability to do 3D within the IIIF standards. But that, I think, is something that people that are involved with IIIF are very excited about as its likely future, or one of its future uses, rather. So, to conclude, the IIIF is, I think, very exciting. It could play a major role in how we study, teach, share, and engage with art history in the future. And as you saw, their images are, in a sense, just the start. They're the key of it. There are already working groups extending and enhancing those APIs and specifications to enable the embrace of time-based media and 3D objects and virtual reality. I hope this rather broad and quick-fire introduction I've given sparks your interest and engagement with IIIF in general. I'm not at all a IIIF expert, so don't expect any guru-like specifics from me, but if you do have any questions about the presentation at all, or any more broad stroke questions in the area about IIIF, do please fire away. Thank you very much.